2016 was an interesting year for anime films. Due to the growing popularity of anime culture in English countries now larger than ever, distributors were more inclined to help screen anime films in the largest theater chains of their respective countries. It was the first time I started seeing films from Japan be marketed on such a mass scale in both the chain and local theaters that dotted the city I was studying in. Tsuneo Katabuchi's In This Corner of the World, Naoko Yamada's A Silent Voice, and Makoto Shinkai's emotional blockbuster, Your Name. Seeing posters of those same films at the local theaters made me realize that there was a shift in perception of anime films like never before. But none of those films are the ones I'm talking about today. But instead, a film that was released in theaters the year before but lingered into the next one amongst these other greats. Forgotten. Grossing nearly $50 million at the box office worldwide and becoming the second highest grossing film of 2015 in Japan. A film that premiered at the Toronto Film Festival and actually won Japanese Academy Prize of 2015. Despite these accolades, it's an anime film that I see not getting any attention, especially from the people who love this filmmaker's work. And I still remember going to see it. I was alone in the theater actually, which was really nice. But 120 minutes later, I walked out of that theater, out into the street, and I thought about that film all the way home. I had a massive smile on my face, and even thought about giving my dad a call. The next day I was at university, and people were talking about what kind of films everyone had seen lately. To which my immediate answer was, yeah, I saw this movie called The Boy and the Beast. A film by Mamoru Hosoda that has had no real love in the West, nor used as an example of his best work, especially here on YouTube. It is, to me, one of the best films I've ever seen, and despite its many flaws, I will now spend the next however long I want to talk about how great it is in spite of that, and why you should watch it anyway. My name is Mugen, and this is The Boy and the Beast, Why You're Not Alone.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
Okay, before we start talking about how this movie really slaps, we need to talk about the man who made it. In the history of Japanese animation, there is one name you can never ignore, or seem to escape. A man who created stories that have stood the test of time and since become immemorial. Hayao Miyazaki. Now, this video isn't about him, obviously. However, it is through Hosoda's work that he has once been labeled as the next Miyazaki. To tell you how he got that moniker, I want to take you through his career. Hosoda started creating by making paper animations, and after a couple of successful animation programs was inducted into Toei Animation, a studio famous for its A-list IP adaptations and ruthless copyright claims. Hosoda was offered to begin work at Toei in his first year of high school, however declined so he could focus on studying for his midterms. But after completing his time in college, was able to get his foot back in the door with the help of a producer by the name of Takeshi Tamiya. Hosoda started as a keyframe animator and later went on to be a storyboard artist and assistant director for some of Toei's biggest shows. The original Dragon Ball Z, the Broly movie, Slam Dunk, Broly 2 The Second Coming, Yu Yu Hakusho the movie, Slam Dunk Again, Sailor Moon S, Rurouni Kenshin, and Revolutionary Girl Utena, to name a few. Many of these credits were unofficial storyboards, as he was hired as an animator originally, but put in the extra work underneath different pseudonyms. However, it would not be his fate, as Hosoda would get his chance to finally assist in directing a few episodes for certain projects, starting with Spooky Kitaro as his first and Himitsu as his second. And in September of 1998, he started on his first theatrical project, based on an IP of a series of kids' toys and gadgets that desperately needed a film. And that's right, it's Digimon, baby. The project was conceived at first to be a standalone story, but was then changed after the success of the manga serialized in V-Jump magazine. The man they decided to helm the project was the GOAT himself, Hosoda. So the project turned into a short film that would be used as a prologue to the anime, which would air the day after the film's release in theaters. The suits at Toei wanted the film to be a large-scale kaiju fight film, despite Digimon competing with Pokemon, which was the entire opposite of that. Although short and not a complete story for a newcomer besides getting hyped at Digimon Digimon fighting like Godzilla and Mothra, Hosoda established a profound effect of being able to project emotion with the main characters cheering for their monster, which created the emotional tie that one would have with them. Almost a year later, Digimon became a hugely successful IP, and when deciding to create another short to commemorate the end of the first season, Toei optioned for another 40-minute film in the style of the first. Hosoda was then called forth once again. Before that, he had even directed an episode of Digimon and One Piece while also getting more exposure in the realm of CG animation. His experience in the field was really widening. And so on March 4th, 2000, Digimon Our War Game would be released. This film took place after the original Digimon series and follows 4 of the original cast as they try to destroy a Digimon that has been infected by a computer virus. As someone who watched Digimon and the Fox Kids cut of this film when I was 7, it is perfect if you have that nostalgia for the franchise. It's insane. Even now, it is fun with high stakes and brilliant animation mixed with interesting CG environments. If you grew up and saw this film when it came out, then you'll know it was a huge win, making $20 million at the box office and would later serve as a blueprint for Hosoda's later work. One more gig with Digimon CG Wacky Races, and Hosoda was now only directing. He had made such a name for himself with the Digimon movies that he was called by name to come help Studio Ghibli with an upcoming project on loan from Toei. After a stint with Miyazaki, he returned to Toei directing episodes for series once again. After directing an episode for a series called Oje Mojo Doremi Dokkan, Hosoda was contacted by Madhouse co-founder and later MAPPA founder Masao Murayama, on the basis that this episode was likened to a fantasy novel written by Yasutaka Tsutsui in 1967. A novel Hosoda himself had tried to get adapted into an animated film at Toei, which they never greenlit. Hosoda received an offer from Maruyama to leave Toei and direct the novel's adaptation for Madhouse, letting Hosoda direct the 6th One Piece film, Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island, as a send-off. He then left Toei, making one quick undercover directing anime opening stint for a show that is the namesake of this channel. Hosoda went on to create his first work as a freelance and auteur director, adapting the novel The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. I know this video is about a kid and a big bear dad, but Hosoda's career up until then is really important, so don't worry, I'm only going to speedrun these 3. 2006. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time releases and does bangers at the box office, raking in $3 million in its opening weekend. Despite the lack of marketing, reviews and positive word of mouth create a rush for people to see the film. So many filmgoers even asked if they could stand in the theater to watch despite seats being full. Hosoda wins the Animated Japanese Academy Award, beating out the Ghibli film of that year, Tales from Earthsea. In 2009, Hosoda directed his first film not based on any existing material, Summer Wars, fulfilling the ideas of what he could have done with the concept of the Digimon war game, but basing it around family and those without it. Digimon isn't bad necessarily, but it's unrefined comparatively. And here is that familiar look of the internet, coupled with traditional and CG animation that still holds up. Kinda ahead of its time for 2009. Can't imagine the whole bad AI thing happening though. $18 million at the box office, critics and word of mouth online spread the film's story, won another Japan Academy Prize, and it goes down as another banger. Finally, Hosoda became the director he always wanted to be, and even co-founded his own studio, Studio Chizu. Now more free than ever to create his films, he got to work. With the ridiculous amount of characters present in Summer Wars, it was only fitting that Hosoda's next piece had less. Specifically, A Family of 3. 2012's Wolf Children, co-written with veteran screenwriter Sotoku Okudera, who had written Hosoda's concepts up until this point. A film of a mother raising 2 children of wolf origin. It is different from Summer Wars in many ways, but still not lost on emotionally charged peaks and valleys. The story was not facing a world-ending threat, but instead seeing a family try and find their place within it, becoming the 2nd highest grossing film that year in Japan and raking in $29 million. Another Japanese Academy Award, and back to the drawing board he went. Except this time, Hosoda would take the concepts of both his original film Summer Wars and Wolf Children to try and strike a film that could balance the strengths of both. A story with a magical threat, but also the powerful theme of growing up and finding family. So let's talk about it. The film, like every single one of Hosoda's, begins on a cold open. A black screen that is disrupted with an upbeat tone as trumpets begin to play, announcing the narrators who are here to tell a story. Hyakushubo and Tatara, who we don't know yet but we'll meet later. 2 flames appear with each voice and pull back to reveal thousands in a city called Jutanai in the realm of the beasts. The Lord of Jutanai said he was ready to reincarnate into a god, but required a successor while he decided what kind of god. The film makes note of the positive qualities the successor requires to be the next lord, and emphasizes that they had to be above all strong. One candidate is Eozen, who through exposition is the model successor with great strength, an abundance of apprentices, 2 sons, and a pure heart. The other is a beast called Kumatetsu, who despite his size was unbelievably agile and just as strong as Eozen, maybe more, but was not a kind beast. He was arrogant, selfish, and impatient. In the first 2 minutes and 33 seconds of the film, the groundwork for the beast we're going to meet and the world he lives in is given to us quickly, so that we don't have to waste time exploring who both beasts are and why they are fighting to become the next lord. Hosoda uses a similar exposition-heavy intro in Summer Wars when introducing the online world of Oz before meeting the main characters. Even the reveal of the Wolfman is done in the intro of Wolf Children. He does the same thing here, but the difference is the CG. Instead of the world of beasts shown through traditional animation, he uses CG at the beginning to visualize the basis of a tale being told around a fire. Fire will come back later in the film. Notice how I didn't use footage from the film when discussing the characters. And it's because the film shrouds everything visually. It allows us to imagine what this world is like. We can experience them as our main character does. With that done, our narrators end the intro with the most important story note. And that is, Kumatetsu, while strong, did not have a single apprentice, nor did he have any sons. If you haven't seen Boy and the Beast, the rest of this video is going to be full of spoilers. Hosoda's opening credits all usually play the same way. Cold open introduces the title, and then the opening credits jump cut between the intro of characters or their lives. But The Boy and the Beast adapts Hosoda's style in the way the opening is presented tonally. You see, the intro sequence gave us an idea of fantasy, adventure, and the air of a tale, coupled with swirling upbeat music and warm visuals. But from that, we jump cut between credits to our reality. A cold, dark, and less uplifting world of Shibuya. The world of humans is filled with the sounds of cars, people walking, and diegetic music from the local stores. And here, we meet our main character, Ren, who stares directly into the camera only for his attention to be drawn to 2 unaccompanied minors being escorted to the local police station by authorities. Without seeing his reaction, he runs off frame left into the crowd. Cutting in between wide-angle and POV shots of Shibuya's security cameras, Ren dashes into a nearby alley and meets Chico, who for the rest of the film will be our equivalent of a mute Disney animal companion to our protagonist. Through flashback, Ren is shown to be a runaway, to have lost his mother in an accident and his father seemingly absent when he's being taken into custody on his mother's side. Feeling abandoned, Ren decides to live on his strength and no one else's. Seeing his saddened figure wandering Shibuya alone, understanding finally his situation and his goal, to be strong. One thing Hosoda knows about filmmaking and animation is using techniques a director could use in live action to his advantage. Take sound design, for example. I mentioned earlier when we cut to Shibuya, the first sounds we heard were of the city, and throughout this entire sequence of 4 minutes, any sounds we hear to set the mood are pure realism. There's no trumpets, there's no violins, there's nothing that was in the intro. Shibuya stores, the wind by the curtains, and the roaring turbine of a plane. That's our music. And it's because, to escalate back to the adventure promised in the opening and make it feel so extraordinary, we have to make Ren's world, our world, feel extremely less so. But that first piece of music is shown after Ren declares hate to the world. Running away somewhere off screen, the camera lingers on a window panel where a shadow in Ren's form repeats his words before disappearing. The music is the slow ring of wind chimes, reverberating as the sounds of Shibuya drown away. Remember this moment, it's important. Ren sits defeated under the overpass of the Shibuya station, and that same set of wind chimes and high-pitched percussions return, but this time less distorted when 2 robed figures walk by Ren. When the shorter figure says to the larger one that at this pace a human pupil would do, he takes at the idea and then stands in front of Ren demanding his attention. After the child threatens the pair, we can guess who the large one is by his feet, stature, and hand, as he reaches for Ren's face, all the while the chimes escalate in speed. Ren encounters the beast of our story. The large beast offers Ren to come with him, only for his cohort to dismiss him and run off. Chimes disappear. Seeing what looked like the beast's head down an alley, he follows suit lest be taken back to his legal guardians. The last shot of Ren as he enters the alley is another camera POV shot which has been used 7 times now. Upon making that decision, music returns to the film again, and ramps in volume as Ren walks through an alley unlike any in Shibuya. Corridors of stone and endless hallways with an insert to its magical nature echoed with animals staring at the camera. Following the shadows of the duo he chased after, Ren is quite literally thrown into the world of beasts, as each shot shows beasts of different sizes, and the entire bazaar frightens him only for the alley he came from to disappear. The music is in full swing, finally echoing the film's main instrumental identity of trumpets, violins, and pianos, bringing Ren out of the claustrophobic world of Shibuya and into the open, colorful, and vast world of Jutanai. The sequence continues as Ren runs and scrambles through the market as we watch from his POV, knocking over baskets and ducking under merchant stands. Speaking of POV shots, there are a lot of POV shots, not just in the film, but nearly all of Hosoda's work. This goes far back as Digimon. The reason for this is during his time at college. Hosoda was part of the film club, where he also spent a lot of time making small-budget independent short films. Something that has helped every animation filmmaker distinguish themselves in the industry is how they represent their animated subjects when you can decide virtually anywhere you want the camera to go. Hosoda decides to use limitations in his camera work. That is, treating the camera like it actually exists in the space of the film's duration for dramatic effect. He has done this with every single one of his films, and as of 12 minutes into this one, he has used nearly every kind. The first is the wide shots. Not only to place his subject in a space where they feel small, but to also set the scene between multiple characters at play, especially in combat or the lead up to one. This works comedically as well, keeping a conversation of dialogue going even though visually the same routine of action is being played out. Introducing a character between cuts of the same wide shot utterly changes the context of what each character may be thinking without overusing dialogue, and even with some great visuals, can show the passage of time or the heartache of an event just past. His wide shots also further exemplify his character designs. The animation in his films is so kinetic. In a single wide shot, characters can run from one end of the room to the other, and it just feels so seamless and natural. How Hosoda plays with dialogue is evident in how he frames scenes differently from other directors in animation. For instance, this scene is when Ren and Kumatetsu first talk in the latter's home. The camera is front on, having both characters look almost directly at the camera but speaking to one another. This gives us a good look at their reactions when asked hard questions or reactions to interesting answers. Dialogue follows traditional escalating dynamics when the conversation turns to arguments. The first scene between Eos and Kumatetsu evokes their general discussion into disagreement and blatant arguing. Hosoda uses the knowledge of live-action cinematography even in its details by having the camera emulate depth of field in scenes where characters are just having a conversation. A subtle effect that almost elevates it to the point that the film is literally drawing you in. I know this kind of technology has been around for a while, but you don't often see directors in animation try and use these techniques to further evoke their story, like Makoto Shinkai. But some subtleties of Hosoda's work aren't in the camera or its abilities, but in the frame that you barely notice. The backgrounds. Okay, hear me out. In today's world of animation and further, it is getting easier and easier to create pieces of work digitally and within a fraction of the time as traditional animation. Many auteurs of film animation know this, but how they use it to approach their work is what separates them. Hosoda, growing up on the work of his peers, still values the process of traditional hand-drawn animation and the lifelike qualities it brings to his characters. And the same can be said for the background he imposes them onto. While at university, the main craft he was there for wasn't filmmaking, but painting. Starting in junior high school, where he would paint the many locales around the neighborhood he grew up in. Getting sketching lessons from a part-time teacher, and then enrolling at the Kanazawa College of Art. He talked about having a special affinity for locations that felt like lived-in spaces where people breathed life into the places. When it came time to make his films, even utilizing technology like CG animation, Hosoda made damn sure each backdrop of his films were that. Lived in. This is something that is done less and less in animation because it costs more time and money. But Hosoda doesn't want to lose that tradition of making background paintings that really do bring home exactly the place we're looking at. Even making sure that the CG team who scan them in aren't losing the quality of the paintings that are being made. In fact, he would go so far to make sure the CG team would make something like petals falling into frame emotional and uniquely animated instead of just letting wind generation take care of the work. It sounds pretentious, but when you look at these shots with those amazing painting backgrounds and this amazing CG, it just works. He had backdrop artists straight from Ghibli not only work on Boy and the Beast, but previous films in his catalog. In the making of documentary of the film, Noriko Takuya mentioned how she had been doing this background work since Nausicaa. Her work, particularly with backgrounds, involved harmony. Harmony is a technique used to make items in the backdrop stand out from them to draw the eye of the audience for small details in the story. She did this suit of armor in Summer Wars and the flowers in the May scene you just saw before. Each backdrop was painstakingly created and scanned to be used in scenes that brought that sense of realism. Spaces that truly feel lived in. All of his films follow this ethos and they always show character. like Makoto's room in The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and of course Kumatetsu's house. Speaking of Kumatetsu, here's the big eye right now. Ren becoming the pupil of the Red Bear himself is the core relationship of the film. I mean, it's in the title. In the scene where Ren meets our main cast of the Beast World, Kumatetsu, Tatara, and Hyakushubo, Kumatetsu appears out of the darkness to show a big grin and cheeks blushing from alcohol. Now, with nowhere to go and no one willing to take him in, Ren follows Kumatetsu home as his new pupil. Hyaku and Tatara pondering the reason for this, if maybe it's kindness, but Tatara really just instates that this is about competition mentioned in the opening. Becoming a god doesn't interest him, it's winning. In his cluttered and messy home, Kumatetsu questions why Ren followed him with no answer, since he knows the reason is because there is nowhere really for him to go. Ren dismisses his pity, which Kumatetsu exclaims he doesn't, and that you have to rely on your own power. This doesn't make Ren special or an exception to that rule. If anything, he doesn't care Ren is alone in this world. Not giving his name to a beast he met, but instead his age, Ren is renamed Kyuta by Kumatetsu. So if you hear me say Ren and Kyuta, just know it's the same person. The next day at breakfast, the dynamic of pupil and master is set when Ren refuses to eat raw eggs with rice. Screaming at each other about how and what Ren will eat is decided by his master. Ren denies that he will ever be Kumatetsu's pupil and sprints back to the market, with Kumatetsu giving chase. Enter Iozan. Iozan had been introduced alongside his sons in the intro, but here we can see what kind of father and person he is that the intro describes him as. Seeing his interactions with his sons Ichirohiko and Jiromaru show his love for the boys, but his duties as a model beast of Jutanai, which stop him from ever being constantly present, much to his son's dismay. Talking to Kumatetsu about finding Ren, they disagree about the danger a human can bring to the world of beasts, specifically the darkness that linger in human hearts. And the discussion slowly builds into a challenge to be the next Lord of Jutanai right here and right now. One of the best things about the film's ability when it comes to action is that they take just as much care in establishing our characters, not in how they show fights, but through how the characters fight. When beginning the bout, Kumatetsu is typically not interested in paying respect to his opponent by bowing or giving any kind of etiquette, turning the crowd literally against him, and further trying to tease Iozan with his light footwork and agility despite his immense mass and size. He's a show-off, and his fighting style evokes that. After taking multiple jabs at Iozan, the camera utilizes wide-angle shots and minimal cuts with incredible keyframing from the animators adding those small details of hair being brushed by the blows of the beast. After missing each attack, he invites Iozan to try and see if he can land a hit on him, showcasing his confidence in skill. Dodging both blows with ease and a smirk much to Ren's surprise. And then something incredible happens. With no doubt in the viewer's mind that Kumatetsu is strong, his skill in employing it is lacking, and through combat, Hosoda can show that about his character. With blood pooling from his face, he struggles to dodge the incoming attacks, even getting so enraged he attacks with no caution, thus losing the first round. Round 2, the fighters transform to mimic their animal sides. The fight is a sumo-style battle of stamina, where Kumatetsu looks like he's going to be the eventual winner, but at the last second, the roar and cheer of the entire crowd for Iozan to not give up fuels him, defeating Kumatetsu. Like I said, the fight and action show character, and this moment is both Kumatetsu and Iozan seen in the eyes of their world's people, shown to us and to Ren. The music is amazing. It's employing alterations of tracks that were in the intro and ones that will be heard again later. But more impactful than the music in these fights are the sounds that accompany them. While Hosoda has his obsession with realism shown so far with backgrounds, it extends further to the sound design. Just listen to any scene in this film, and it sounds insane. After taking multiple blows from Iozan's sword, drenched in sweat and losing more and more, Ren shouts for Kumatetsu to keep fighting, despite his loss happening regardless. The fight is broken up by the rabbit god Lord Guy, and everyone goes on their way, as Kumatetsu sits on the ground and sees the only person there for him is Ren, while everyone else continues to walk by. The track Horizon plays as Kumatetsu walks home defeated, with Ren following him, though not following him, just there in the background. A similar alteration of this song played when Ren followed him home the previous night. Ren comments on his strength, despite Kumatetsu reiterating that he lost anyway. Ren's desire for strength and motivation to be tougher after the great loss of his family, he agrees to be his apprentice, despite Kumatetsu not believing him. It's an amazing scene as Ren sits down, cracks an egg, and tries, despite the taste, to eat Kumatetsu's breakfast from earlier that morning. And it's this moment here, this one scene of two people who find this weird connection. The only boy who cheered for him in the fight and is willing to stay and learn from him when no one else would, puts a smile on Kumatetsu's face and mine every single time. This unique bond between pupil and teacher is what now drives the plot for the rest of the film. To avoid recapping every scene and how it unfolds like I have been doing, I want to dissect Ren and Kumatetsu's relationship, and to do that we need to look at the beast himself. As you've surmised from the scene I show you, Kumatetsu is not the model teacher or master. While researching the film's making, there was no mention of Kumatetsu's inspiration, but I had a feeling it was based on a certain character in one of the greatest cinematic masterpieces of all time, Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Okay, if you haven't seen Seven Samurai, you should probably go do that. Watch this film, then watch Seven Samurai. It's amazing. Without this film and Kurosawa's others, you wouldn't have some of the best media of all time. You wouldn't have the Westerns, you wouldn't have Star Wars, you wouldn't have Vagabond, and most importantly, you wouldn't have Bug's Life. The film is gorgeous, and the characters showcased on the screen, I think, are primarily outshined by the iconic Toshiro Mifune. This man is not only one of the most iconic Japanese actors of all time, but one of the most iconic actors in cinema history. Mifune's character of Seven Samurai, Kikuchiyo, is one of his greatest achievements. Kikuchiyo is one of the 7 characters brought to the village to defend it against bandits, but he is the outlier of the samurai. He isn't trained as one, he doesn't hold the calm nature of a matured Musashi, but instead a rogue with nowhere to go and the self-worn title of a samurai. Kikuchiyo is loud, boisterous, he's always joking around, and he sees those who are weak and are willing to give in to death as cowards. He values strength and has lived on it for most of his life, his personality being exemplified by his exaggerated katana. Even the way he holds his versus others, preferring it on his back rather than around his waist. While Kumatetsu can be playful, maybe not as much, he is just as susceptible to bursts of anger and relies on the idea of strength. It is reflected in his name with the kanji for Kuma, meaning bear or wild animal, and Tetsu, meaning penetrate, often with force. All of this is attributed to his non-defeatist attitude, even saying himself, when he decides to do something, it gets done. His visual appearance even mimics Mifune, with his distinct eyebrows, glare, and, of course, demeanor. Some scenes even pay homage to Kikuchiyo when he is fishing and playing a prank by smacking a hammer. I thought the similarities had to be in some sort of inspiration. But would you believe the validation I got when I read Hosoda's art book that I didn't know existed until writing half this script, which confirmed it is true. Yes, I knew it. I'm a genius. Anyway, Kumatetsu, unlike Kikuchiyo, has no apparent reason for his attitude, at least until he starts to train Ren, which shows that this film is a master and apprentice film. Many of these stories always have a teacher who is calm, collected, and very much the voice of reason and wisdom that both the characters and the audience can truly learn from. However, Hosoda decides to go against those conventions and remain faithful, as Kumatetsu is not a master. When trying to teach Ren how to swing his sword like him, he tells Ren to just do it. At the advice of Hyuk, he tries to explain, but to extremely very terrible effect, using the words whoosh and bang, blaming Ren that he is just bad at learning. Even saying something dumb like grab the sword in your heart or some cringe shit. Anyways, this is not a small instance of Kumatetsu just being a goof, as we later learn from Hyuk that Kumatetsu's inability to teach is partially because of who taught him everything he knows. No one. He had no parents or teachers to guide him. None could show him how to hold a sword, clean, fish, or fight. He had to learn all of it on his own. While his moves are sloppy and his dodging ability is not perfect, there is no doubt he is strong. Because of this, it has become his greatest strength, but also his weakness. He is unable to part knowledge or receive it, since all he knows is what he taught himself, and his nature of being outlandish and angry caused people to want nothing to do with him. Like Ren noticed during his fight with Yozen, no one cheered for him. He's all alone. even the crowds walking by him. Not a care in the world. Just like Ren. And so through learning is when the dynamic of this surrogate relationship becomes all the more powerful. Due to Kumatetsu's lack of explaining things, Ren decides to try and learn from him the same way children learn from their parents, by copying them. Kumatetsu picks up on this and understands that while he cannot teach, he knows having someone to follow is something he never had. Ren imitating Kumatetsu is the first time someone has tried to be like him. Most of all, understand him. And so Ren follows, under the beat of Masakatsu Takagi's score, Boys Under the Summer Sky, while doing his daily chores reflecting his master's routine no matter how mundane. Homage to films like the Karate Kid scene of waxing a car to create defense strikes. Ren notices that he now can tell how Kumatetsu is moving without seeing him, and from this, attacks Kumatetsu only to swiftly dodge every retaliating attack, even laying Kumatetsu on the ground to Tatara's amusement. Here is where the changing character dynamics finally begin to shift. Ren now offers to teach him how to read his opponent. If Kumatetsu can show him how he swings a sword and throws a punch, Hosoda decides to take any kind of master-apprentice film and flip it on its head, showing that the master can also learn from the student, the same way parents can learn something new from their children. It is in their collective knowledge of teaching one another that they both mutually benefit by following the other. Ren's growth is mirrored by Kumatetsu's, who had never had anyone to follow but himself. Despite Ren's teaching being unorthodox, Kumatetsu sticks with it, surprisingly, because for the first time in his life, Kumatetsu has someone to follow and someone else to understand despite how hard it is for him, and someone who is willing to give him the time. A montage of training, not for the student, but the master as well, showing the seasons pass and time go on. Those who bullied Ren for being a human see him as a person to respect rather than hate due to his newfound strength. And it's here you notice that, hey, they're working together. Almost like a father and a son. But every time you feel the film is starting to settle into a state of normalcy, Hosoda is ready to change that, and in the second half of the film, it's evident. Ren, now older, wants to make his own training choices, much to the defiance of his master. Having their usual spats, Ren runs and hides in an alley, but it is one that he has seen years ago. And now halfway through the film, Hosoda rips that idea of what you think will happen right out from us and our main character. To show how he does this, I think it's important to talk about the kind of films Hosoda makes. They can be categorized by many themes that all oddly relate to each other, like other studios or directors. One of Hosoda's calling cards is his ability to portray characters at different stages in their lives and drawn into two different worlds that they must live between. Summer Wars shows us how the online world of Oz can greatly affect and impact the people and world we live in today. The avatars in Oz reflect personalities and occupations. Kenji's avatar is a small meek squirrel after his account is stolen, but still resilient. It's reflecting who he is. His strength isn't physical, his strength is his brain. In The Boy and the Beast, Jutanai faces physical destructive threats while Shibuya is being destroyed, linking the two worlds physically. These worlds can also force us to combine both, like in Wolf Children, as we see Hana struggle to raise children whose origin of birth is magical. When the children are sick, she is torn between taking them to a vet or a hospital, but cannot decide as she is terrified of anyone learning of what they are, trying to give them a normal education and discovering what kind of future they can even have as they get older, while the children themselves are trying to understand that as well. These themes apply to his later work after Boy and the Beast as well. Those themes are dualities, worlds that mirror the other and also characters that mirror each other. The other is childhood, innocence, and maturity. Every single one of Hosoda's films feature characters who are in a stage of their lives where they are trying to discover who they are. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time follows Makoto in her last years of high school, a time when mistakes and mishaps happen to her constantly, and can never take back what she says or does, anything differently. That daily teen angst and regret, but also the loss of time with friends. The days draw closer to the end of the school year as she begins to realize that this time with her friends will not last forever. In Wolf Children, Hana is forced to stop her aspirations of studying to care for her children as a single mother at a young age. Her children, Yuki and Ame, understanding they are not like other children even if they want to be. These two themes make up the bulk of Hosoda's work, and for Ren, it is extremely apparent when he returns to the world of humans. When Ren was last in Shibuya, it was night, and this is the first time we see the human world portrayed in a light and beautiful atmosphere. And that same sound design when we last left returns. The diegetic noise of music from stores, people walking, cars, and airplanes, but this time in bloom. The duality of the two worlds had been already established visually, besides the inhabitants, with lighting and sound. Earlier in the video, I mentioned the lack of music present in Shibuya except when Ren experienced the supernatural, and music only became present when he had left the human world. Tonally, this makes sense for our story, but also thematically, as in this world, music is brought back into Ren's life, and so can happiness and joy. Color temperature reflected that shift as well. Calling Shibuya cold compared to the warmth and vibrant air of Jutanai wasn't metaphorical, it was also literal. So when Ren returns, the diegetic sound is louder, and since it is during the day, the washed color is brighter. Not cold, it's luminous. In the final act, Shibuya becomes a warm, vibrant place with music now that Ren has changed. A lot of people may talk about how Hosoda likes to show shots that don't seem to have any impact on the plot, and I would argue those shots do because they always linger. It's creating an image that you will remember as the film goes on, like when we first met Ren. So later in the final act of the film, when Ren returns to the world of Shibuya, now determined and now becoming the person he wants to be, and Ren is staring back at the camera, but this time taller, capable, and no longer lost among the crowd. See, up until this point, Ren has only sought strength, and in his mind he has gained it, but only when returning to Shibuya do we see something lacking. Ren tries to read a book he loved as a child, Moby Dick, but struggles to read the kanji as when he left the human world he was just 9. By establishing he has a knack for learning new skills both in the forms of combat but also everyday life from the beasts that raised him, he does not hesitate to ask how to read to the first person he sees, Kaede. Many would say in the film's latter half it loses sight of its core relationship and themes, but I disagree. The film at this point until meeting Kaede was an action-adventure turned master-apprentice story turned father-son surrogate relationship story. But it is here halfway through after cementing the unusual relationship Ren has, but then exposes him to the world he is from and the life he could have had. It becomes something else. Kaede may serve at first glance as the romantic interest and nothing else, but she serves actually as another teacher to Ren, where no one else can. It builds a bond, and seemingly a romantic one, but it isn't to serve that goal, but instead to strengthen Ren's want, the conflict he's in, and his eventual need. Like the anchor that was his beast family which tied him to Jutanai, Kaede soon acts as Ren's anchor to the human world. Ren saves her by defeating and scaring off a group of delinquent classmates, using Hosoda's iconic lateral tracking technique. I mentioned Hosoda's love for camera techniques, but this is one of the most well-known calling cards I didn't mention, as he uses sound effects to imply what may be happening off-screen and tracking back to reveal the outcome and context that was missing. It is amazing here because it illustrates that Ren's strength is not visually noteworthy and truly not the focus of what makes him who he is, or the true goal of his character. And that's actually a lot of the action for the film. Majority of the action is just used to evoke character and maybe push the plot a little bit forward. But once Ren gains his strength that he wants from training with Kumatetsu for years, we rarely see it. And the reason is because it doesn't matter. By offering to teach someone so interested in literature and learning as she is, Ren strengthens his bond with Kaede. Seeing an ordinary human girl who has a family that takes care of her, she is also isolated, just like Ren. While her family are very stable and non-destructive, Kaede's family have an expectation of satisfying academic results. Because of that, Kaede works very hard, but she also feels like she doesn't know who she is besides being this thing that is meant to only provide success for her parents. It's easy to think that other people have it better in their families, even if they have a great upbringing. She envies Ren's relationship with his master, saying she would feel closer to her parents if she disagreed with them, or at the very least had an argument with them, besides just feeling autonomous around them. While it's not the most action-heavy section of the film, nor is it based primarily in Jutanai, which is full of fantasy, This entire act is important to Ren's character and how he reflects with his two anchors, Kumatetsu and Kaede. And from this shows that Ren is being pulled between two versions of himself, between being Ren and being Kyuta. Earlier in this video, I showcased shots that when cut together are the same camera angle but contextually different. One example that is most prominent is when Ren runs away from Kumatetsu the first time years ago. It is actually mirrored again here when Ren is older. The shots are virtually identical, even Kumatetsu's animation seems to be reused for the sake of budget and time. Now, what may seem cheap shows how the characters, despite visual change, are the same. The film uses the same angles to show the same environments and scenes, but mirrors them slightly to give a different context. This is what great storytelling can come when juxtaposing worlds and characters against each other. The two sides of their personalities mirror the other, and even parts of their own identity mirror a side of them they didn't know existed. To show you what I mean, I need to talk about another Kurosawa film that actually inspired this second half of the film. A film that follows two groups of people, both with sides ugly and human, constantly at odds. Yojimbo. Up until this point, it shouldn't be a surprise that Hosoda loves films, especially films that aren't Japanese. Digimon War Game was actually inspired by the 80s film War Games, which involves kids trying to stop nuclear devices. In that same art book I've been mentioning, Hosoda cites this film as one of the inspirations for the story in terms of family, Kumatetsu's and Iozen's. Alright, let me explain. Yojimbo follows a nameless samurai who is also played by Toshiro Mifune, who comes across a small town that has been divided by two warring factions who have sworn to fight each other to the death over an important financial feud. Mifune arrives and decides to play both sides against each other so that they may defeat each other and spare the innocents of the village. Now, that sounds different from the story I've been talking about so far, despite the two beasts who are preparing to fight each other. But the duality of who these characters are is reflected not in the premise, but in the characters of Yojimbo. Take a look again at Iozen's sons, Jiromaru and Ichirohiko. Jiromaru is Iozen's strong-headed and gluttonous son, so dignified by his father's status that he intentionally bullies Ren, because he overheard his father say that humans can become monsters because of the darkness inside them. After his brother steps in to stop him, he reiterates that he just can't stand people who are weak, and that monsters should not be exempt. Jiromaru visually reflects the character of Inokichi from Yojimbo. First of all, by his visual appearance, his round face, and that clean unibrow. Inokichi is the dim-witted brother of one of the gang leaders, easily fooled and vain to his standing as the brother of a soon-to-be leader of the village. Inokichi is also fascinated and respects the nameless samurai's immense strength and skill with the blade. This mirrors Jiromaru's personality in kind. He's vain of his standing as the son of possibly the next lord, and he only sees value in other people when it involves strength. The difference than just lifting the character is how Hosoda portrays growth. Commonly in his films, Hosoda will portray characters as setups to be what the audience expects, but always finds a way to surprise us. To give you an idea, I just need to spoil a small character aspect of Wolf Children. Just skip ahead to here if you don't want to hear it. In Wolf Children, you can see at a glance that the person who is more in touch with their wolf side is the eldest, Yuki. She's catching birds, she's being loud, and teasing her brother for being so weak. But her development is the opposite of what you would expect, opting not to become a wolf as she longs for the life of a normal girl. Her brother Ame is so soft-spoken and weak, you would assume that it would be his fate to want to be a human, but it's actually the opposite. Later in life, he embraces his animal instincts, he becomes more aggressive and assertive, and he aspires to live as his body intends for him. Their roles ultimately become reversed. I bring this up because Hosoda does the same thing with Iozen's sons. Ichirohiko is the opposite of Jiromaru. At the age of 9, he is strong, skilled, and aspirational to be like his father. But like Wolf Children, their roles are reversed. And after the time skip, he soon mirrors his Yojimbo counterpart, Unosuke, the only villain who has a weapon that can outmatch a blade in Yojimbo. He's got a fucking gun! Unosuke is much more cunning than his dim-witted elder. He is observant, sharp-eyed, and tells a lie as easy as spotting one. He feels an emotional attachment to his pistol and believes with it he can be as powerful as any man in the land. Ichiro Hiko starts to reflect these traits as an older son to their famous father, believing his father and family are superior to Ren because of his birthright being a beast, despite his doubt telling him it isn't true. Unosuke's gun is also reflected in Ichiro Hiko's powers. Judomaru lays the setup so that he can move things with his mind like the sages of Jutanai, clear to other beasts that they can inherit special powers, but Ichiro states that their father told him to never use them for harm but for good. Like most technology, that is its purpose, and the gun, like Ichiro's powers, falls down the same path of good intentions. Ichiro, when confronting Ren, sends wood chips at his face with his power and begins beating Ren into the dirt, essentially doing what he told Judomaru he would never do, using his powers to then enact awful things upon Kumatetsu and Ren when stabbing the former with an open sword. These brothers mirror the characters of the famous Kurosawa film in different stages of their lives, but also each other as they grow and develop differently. One starts off ignorant and hateful, but grows to be kind and understanding. One starts off aspirational and genuine, but grows to be full of doubt and hate. This hate is what dominates our antagonist and protagonist. Ichiro Hiko was raised by beasts as well, but under different circumstances. Having been a lone babe on the streets of Shibuya, Iozan took him in to give him a home. But because he was aware of the power humans had in the beast realm, he fed more into his adopted son's doubts that he was different. When asked where his snout and fangs were as he got older, only to be assured that one day he would have them and that he is his son, only further deepened his despair that he wasn't. And while looking at his counterpart, a human who is respected by others, despite not being a beast, a thing that he feels he should be. It's a truth that some need to hear of who they are now so that they can become who they are meant to be, but Ichiro Hiko did not. Believing up until the point of fighting Ren on the streets of Shibuya, he was convinced he was a beast. In a way he is, so turned by the darkness that his body and form are twisted. His headwear almost covers his face. He's become the thing he's always wanted to be, but in doing so, is a monster to the people of the human world, and also a monster to the beast world. Ren's situation in the beginning isn't so different, and while also having that darkness and pain inside him, he could have ended up the exact same way. But he was afforded this by someone who didn't hide that he was weak, and didn't care that he was a human. And even disregarding the master, it's attributed to the other beasts who raised him. Tatara and Hyaku, while complete opposites in the film, are the supporting family members who help guide both Ren and Kumatetsu in their goals. While Hyaku is only kind and wishes for a peaceful resolution, encourages both of them to try and understand each other. Tatara, not being at all interested in Ren, even believing everyone is better off if he went elsewhere, begins to get attached to him as he shows promise. By the end of the film, they're committed to being a part of this small weird family and visit Ren nearly every day, even though they don't have to. Before the final act of the film, they see Ren off, as he wants to go help Ichiro Hiko. But their roles are reversed. Hyaku loses his temper at the thought of Ren going and getting himself hurt, and even chastising him for leaving to go fight a monster when his master is close to death. Tatara, the wisecracking, selfish onlooker, now crying and encouragingly expressing for Ren to make it back soon, and they understand what it is he needs to do. Both uncles, in a way, to his growth, and reflect that they could not be prouder of the person they've seen grow up. I could go on and on about everything the film does in its technical aspects of filmmaking, its themes, and how well it combines them together. But ultimately, what I think is important to talk about is why Hosoda made this film, and why it means so much to me. A lot of amazing art in many mediums are directly inspired by the personal struggles people face throughout their lives, and Hosoda's work isn't any different. I mentioned earlier while at Toei how Hosoda became a very well-known name after the immense success he had with the Digimon film. It was because of this success that he was requested to begin work at the highest regarded studio when it came to animated films, Studio Ghibli. He received a call from Toshio Suzuki, co-founder and still current president of the studio at this recording. The offer, I imagine, was an ironic opportunity. Years ago, Hosoda had enrolled in a Ghibli recruitment program after college for the Isao Takahata film Only Yesterday. He was rejected partly due to Hayao Miyazaki himself writing a personal letter saying, "Your talents would be wasted if we were to accept you." A letter he only wrote 2 of. Now being approached by the studio he wanted to be a part of years ago was, I imagine, like winning the lottery, only this time he hadn't bought a ticket. And I think you can glean that from how Hosoda talks about the experience. I knew working at Ghibli was going to be different from Toei. There was a little anxiety there, but being a huge fan of their movies, I responded with a resounding yes. And it wasn't just casual animating work either. You see, I may have told a little bit of a fib earlier in this video. Studio Ghibli at this time was being carried on the backs of the films by Miyazaki and Takahata. Miyazaki at this time in 2001 was 60 years old, so they needed some new blood in the directing department. It was announced that Hosoda would be coming over to officially direct their upcoming film based on the British 1986 novel, Howl's Moving Castle. It's a common tidbit of anime trivia if you love industry history, but for me it was a shock to learn when researching this video. A little bit of trivia as well, this film would later lose at the Academy Awards to Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which, I mean, it's a great movie. Now, if you know your credits well, you would know that it isn't Hosoda's name that graces the silver screen of this movie, but Miyazaki's. It hasn't been openly disclosed as to what took place definitively, but in the years of pre-production, as far as can be told, the film was being storyboarded before getting shut down under Hosoda's stewardship. So I will simply tell of what sources had said happened. Being brought over from Toei, Hosoda was aware the process of making a film would be a little different, and it seemed it was something he struggled with. Suzuki, who was producing the film, mentioned how Miyazaki, while working on Spirited Away, would still give input on the story, characters, and concepts of Howl during pre-production. This may have caused Hosoda to be overwhelmed at being told different things from others at the studio, but also may have taken Miyazaki's words to heart out of respect that it continuously made the film less his and more someone else's, further stalling its progress. As Spirited Away was also drawing much of the studio's manpower away from other projects, it left Hosoda to tread on water and struggle to find people to come and help on Howl's. Not having a name like Takahata or Miyazaki to help sway people over to his side and work on his project probably contributed to his isolation and doubtful demeanor. Yushiro Saito, current president of Studio Chizu and producer of Hosoda's later films, even speculated in an Anime Times article that Hosoda probably questioned himself and even let small pride get in the way of asking for help from others at the studio who did believe in him. Hosoda confirms that he never let his burdens onto his superiors, which he respected, even though he became more isolated. He was being told by unnamed individuals at the studio that he should make the film like Miyazaki would. Regardless if any of these are true or only partially, things escalated to a boiling point as Hosoda's mother fell ill, I imagine worsening his mental state and the film's process. The project was eventually shelved for Miyazaki to finish over the next few years, and Hosoda amicably returned to Toei. A year was spent trying to get a film made at a studio where he had seen the work of his idols before it was even founded. Having watched Miyazaki's Lupin III after seeing it in magazines, meeting Isao Takahata, who created his favorite anime, Anne from Green Gables, being inspired by these greats and many others, he was there at the summit of a place where he could direct movies with those same artists, making something just as wonderful, something that someone growing up could look at and say, "This is my favorite film. I want to make things like this." But that didn't happen. It can feel shitty, given the opportunity to create something only feeling conflicted how to do it by external forces when you yourself know what you want to make. This video is an example of that for me. Hosoda returned to Toei as, quite harshly as it sounds, a failure in the eyes of many in the industry. The newbie brought from Toei who couldn't even make a film. A one-hit wonder. Who would want to hire a director like that? Who would care to notice and who would care to try and see what you could do? The Boy and the Beast is not a film about his time at Ghibli, but I can't help but see the similarities in isolation to his characters, Ren and Kumatetsu. Especially when you are trying your best to learn or grow when there is no one to help you do so. It's an awful feeling to have no one there to show you how to navigate small or large parts of your life that feel insurmountable. When I got out of the theater, I wanted to call my dad. Clearly, the surrogate father-son relationship got to me, and I was feeling sentimental. I thought about that all the way home. I wanted to, so bad, but couldn't. Because he isn't here anymore. Hosoda returned to his hometown to nurse his mother, but was told to go back to Tokyo as he had a dream his extended family could see he needed to achieve. We'll take care of your mother. You need to pursue your dream. Working under those later pseudonym names on extra projects to pay for his mother's medical bills, he probably felt so lost, but it would cease. We know that. He got his chance. His rematch, he called it, when making The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. His second round to make a film and win. Hosoda got that chance because he evoked what he felt being at Ghibli through an episode of OJ Mojo. In episode 40, Doremi meets a woman who used to be a witch. It's an episode that focuses on this character as she tries to figure out what it is she's going to do in the future. All her friends are good at things that they spend their free time doing, and she's worried that she may not be good at something herself. So Mirai, the witch, decides to teach Doremi how to glassblow. It's almost symbolic of Hosoda's time at Ghibli, as this time trying to figure out what it is that you're very good at with someone you very much admire, only for it to end abruptly. Makoto is a girl who tries to undo her mistakes through the power of leaping back through time and fulfills past regrets, only to realize the importance of understanding them and not wasting time. Hosoda's acceptance that his past at Ghibli happened, and he can't change that. Summer Wars is a story of a boy posing as a fiancé and meeting an extended family. I got married and welcomed into a big new family. Having complete strangers become relatives was a fascinating experience that inspired me while making the movie. Yuichiro Saito further explained why this meant so much to Hosoda. His mother was the only blood relative still in his life. One of the older ladies in Summer Wars was inspired by her. Through marriage, he was able to discover what a family is. He wanted to show his mum he was making family movies. Unfortunately, 2 months before the film was completed, she passed away. The next movie should be in honor of my mother. It should celebrate her life. Wolf Children, a film for his mother, to commemorate the will and love she had. A film about the struggles of parenthood, but the eventual love that sprouts from it. Every film followed a piece of Hosoda's own life. Maybe indirectly for some. Even the One Piece film he directed at Toei, which, by the way, this film is evil as. They go full berserker clips in the final battle and is very dark for One Piece, but still, it follows the Straw Hats as they become separated and bitter toward each other, only for Luffy to realize the value of his crew and how lucky he is to have them. It reflects this feeling for Hosoda to find his nakama, his crew, his companions, his craft of people after Ghibli. So with that said, for Hosoda, what is The Boy and the Beast about? Well, it's about Hosoda's late father. I looked up and noticed that Ren's name actually means lotus. Loosely, of course, and Ren is a child thrown into the world despite not having any life skills yet, learns them very quickly from Hyuk. How to cook, clean, and do the laundry. Learning from others, especially from Kumatetsu, even in an unorthodox way. But despite all that, Ren learns there is one thing that Kumatetsu did teach him. When learning different versions and meanings of strength from different beast lords, Kumatetsu says that you sometimes need to find the meaning yourself. Something he had to do himself. And that is something you can't be taught. Meaning. You have to figure it out on your own, even the parts that are missing. I mentioned the third part of the film in some viewers' eyes is seen as lackluster, because things begin to just sprout out of nowhere. But in terms of what Ren is looking for, I think it makes sense. Often we conflate strength with being tough in all ways. When you are strong, there isn't anything that can stop you. If you are strong, emotions won't affect you. That is how Ren sees strength, something he wants so he can survive on his own. But we see throughout the film that strength can mean different things to people, and it's not something you can only live off. Strength did not help him learn to clean and cook for himself, or discover how to dodge and read his opponent. It didn't help him understand and read his childhood book again, and it didn't help him forget the family he lost. When Ren runs through Shibuya in the third act, he sees a familiar shade, a mirage of himself as a boy, the same we saw at the beginning, echoing his hate for everyone. The darkness that has been foreshadowed since Eozen mentioned it. Ren means lotus, and the song that plays here is called Lotus in Mud. When I first saw this, I thought it was the weakest part of the film. Darkness is evil. Everyone has darkness, so don't be swallowed by it. It will consume you. A trope of inner conflict and a cliche in so many other stories. But when Ren sees the shade turn to him, the difference in what is shown as just darkness is an endless void in the center of his chest. The same one Ichirohiko uses and that Ren uses in retaliation. I see this in a different light now because it's not darkness. It is a void, a hole inside them. There's a reason why everyone has this feeling, and at some point you have a void. A space where something is missing.
Kyuta! Kyuta! Osoi! Osoi! Nani yatten da? Keiko suru zo, hora!
My dad was nothing like Kumatetsu. He was not loud or rude. He was quiet but talkative if you asked him things. He was never afraid to teach you something if you wanted to know, and he could tell you how. He wasn't a perfect person, just like Kumatetsu, or any person for that matter. I spent hours talking to him on a spot like this, looking at our street. And now I realize more, but he isn't here to teach me anything anymore. I learned things from everyone else in my family, friends, and others. Just like Ren did. In the making of documentary of this film, I noticed something that really showcased how much I miss my dad when Hosoda talked about his late father, and how this film is almost like this wish of having a relationship with his own child, whether it be very turbulent or very calm, and how some of these conversations he wished he could have had with his dad, having conversations that you may never get to have. It sounds awful, but when I think about any chance if I could have a conversation with him, even if it was arguing, I would take it just for a chance to talk to him, even if we're just screaming at each other about anything. So when I see Kumatetsu and Ren screaming at each other, I'm almost jealous. You know, I still think about maybe the things he still could have taught me that maybe I still don't know. Maybe he did tell me and I've forgotten. You know, I don't know. And it's even worse because I was so young that I didn't even know what I wanted to do yet. And I wanted to eventually show him what I could do. You know, like this channel is so small and tiny, but I'm fucking happy with it and I'm proud of it. And the things I'm making now, I'm so happy with. And I wish I could show him, like, look, the things I'm making. And this film, are the Westerns, because he loved them. I don't know if he ever saw Seven Samurai or Yojimbo, but I wish I got to show him that. Tatara at the beginning joked about what kind of god Kumatetsu would be. Maybe an artifact spirit, a god that's just turned into an item. Ren faces Ichirohiko, drenched in the watered whale of emptiness and despair high atop the National Yoyogi Arena, facing the beast from his favorite book and the person he could have become, ready to give up until the sword full of flame and fire arrives. Reincarnated into an artifact spirit for Ren is Kumatetsu's final wish, Despite being lazy, rude, brash, impulsive, selfish, loud, and obnoxious, for the son he never had, he can be strong. He would be the sword in his heart, making him whole. I don't care how literal a metaphor this is, I lose it here, I can't keep it together when I see it or think about this scene. This film is many of the things I mentioned. A coming-of-age film as well. But like Hosoda's other films, it is about the same thing. Family. Related or found. It took all these people to raise Ren, and he to show them who they could be. Even the loudest, rudest beast of them all. I still have doubts. I doubt many of you will get to the end of this video. But I had to make this video anyway. Because someone has to give it a chance. This is a video about a film I love that nobody cares about, but I think you should watch anyway. Now, when I finish this film, every time, I still want to call my dad. I still want to talk to him. But I don't need to. Because I'm not alone. Not anymore. Thank you all for watching and making it to the end of the video. Before anything else, I want to shout out Moondoggy, who created the animated segments for this video. Please go check out his YouTube. They are fully animated videos about the stuff he loves, but formatted like little mini anime episodes. They're amazing. He also was the one who told me about the Hosoda textbook, The Man Who Leapt Through Time, which was a huge fountain of info in making this video, and even elaborated on events that could only be Google translated in Japanese articles. So if you want to know more about Hosoda, please go check that out as well. This video has been a long time making, and I want to thank the patrons who have stuck around waiting for this video. Big Nerd, Lenoriel, Andrew Goss, Angel Lahoz, and Abby Lay. Thank you so much for being a part of the Patreon, and as you can see here, these are the icons that the patrons chose as their favorite forms of art for this video. If you like the video and want to support me and how I make these videos, then please consider dropping by the Patreon in the description. It is a single tier of $1.50 USD, and with it you get your own icon like these guys here and updates on what videos I'm working on. Plus, behind the scenes audio logs of how the progress of the videos are going, as well as my thoughts on any other media in an unscripted way. There is also a Discord that you can find in the description below if you just want to hang out and meet other people. If you want to support without spending any kind of money, just liking this video, subscribing, and watching another always helps out. Thank you again for watching. That's all from me. My name is Mugen. As always, have a good one.